This is Futurebuilders podcast, and I'm your host, Teemu Uotila. I'm an enthusiastic future explorer working with a Finnish tech company. Together with my guests, we are building the future today. Are you in? This is Futurebuilders podcast with Sampo Hietanen. He's a pioneer of mobility as a service concept, an experienced civil engineer who hopes to create a sustainable future. Together with him, we'll be finding out what is the future of transportation? What environmental impacts does mobility as a service have? Will automatic vehicles shape how we use our time? So, Sampo, awesome to have you here on Futurebuilders. Can you give a short introduction on yourself and MaaS Global, and then we can move on to transportation as a whole?
All right. So my name is Sampo Hietanen. I'm the founder and CEO of this MaaS Global, and often around the world being called as the father of this mobility as a service concept, which sounds great, but actually means that I've been the village idiot that's been talking about it for way more than a decade all around the world, in more than 2,000 events. And sometimes village idiots get to do actually what they're talking about. And this is all about MaaS Global, is to make this concept mobility as a service into reality and into hopefully in a global scale, and being able to disrupt the whole transportation.
So what's your history before MaaS? How did you get involved for this in idea perspective? What's your background?
Well, I'm a civil engineer from background, which is strange because civil engineers normally only follow rules. I've been working in transportation sector all my life. Already long ago, I got this civil engineering company that's nowadays called Destia. I got them to invest in traffic information. Was actually building the world's first SMS-based route information system. I think it was year 99. And was in that whole traffic information space. And actually I remember I had to give a speech about how does technology and digitalization disrupt the whole transportation, and what can we expect as changes. And I was coming from London, and I had too many champagnes, and I started comparing what happened in telecom industry and what might happen in transportation. And at least after the third champagne, this felt like a huge idea that, oh my God, this is going to happen that way.
This is a brilliant idea.
This is a brilliant idea. But that time, actually, it stuck with me. And yes, it was quite an obvious one that the macroeconomics of the whole transportation are such that it's bound to be disrupted.
Yeah. So, were you the sole father of MaaS, or did you have someone whom you sparked with and co-created this idea?
There's been hundreds or even thousands of people who've taken that concept further. So I may have been the first one to talk about it, but it would have happened without me. Yeah. I suppose I've been just the most active one. It's not like let's say like something that you could patent. You can't patent a movement. I think maybe I was able to verbalize that change in a way that it was easy to comprehend for the end users.
Understand it,
I should say that the whole mobility as a service has been at the center of Finnish transport policy since 2011, if I remember correctly. And there's been tens or hundreds of people from ministry, but also from the industry within Finland and everywhere around the world that just got excited about the idea and have been bringing it forward. So no, I can't call it as me, mine alone. It's a movement that maybe I've been the one starting it, but
the spark in there.
Yeah.
So if you look at the concept is at least the majority of Finns, it's very hard to conceptualize that you need to give up your car to someone else's, make it available for someone else. Has that been a challenge to change people's, conceptions, how they perceive transportation, for instance?
In all honesty, I think that the biggest hurdle for us is not in the consumers. They're much more ready than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
They're ready to be serviced. If you give them good enough service, they're ready to go. The thought that I get everywhere around the world is that, well, maybe you Finns, but we British, we Swiss, we Swedish, we Americans, we love to own our cars. It's always, well, since I'm 40 plus, I get to say this. It's 50 plus men who always come to me and say this.
Yeah.
Every single time, and I'm going to London today, and after cocktails, it'll be the same thing. Then there'll be someone under 30, normally a female, that says, no, I'm not. This is not me. I would like to either postpone having a car for as long as possible or try to get rid of it, but nobody else is offering me anything.
Yeah.
So it is, the users are pretty easy to convince. If I say, hey, wouldn't you like to have all your mobility needs in one-stop shop in a single app?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like to have that with the service guarantee? Wouldn't you like to have access to beautiful cars than the mediocre car that you're actually can afford? And they say, yeah, of course, that's how it should be. I mean, I was just in Los Angeles and was talking to, of course, an actor / waiter.
Yeah. I think it's waiter / actor.
Well, of course. Right. And I was explaining what I do.
Yeah.
In the backseat of a split lift.
Yeah.
And I was saying, look, we just put everything into a subscription, just like with Netflix, so you have all your mobility needs from one-stop shop in a simple subscription, like everyone else. Of course, that's how it should have been from the beginning. Yeah. That's obvious. Why didn't I think of that? And why isn't it here yet? That's the only thing that the end users actually ask. It's the industry that has harder time to adopt with this. And we're not asking for people to give up their cars. Come on, it's a great product. What we are doing is we are admiring that as a product and trying to be as good or better. Because the only way you can really do this disruption is look at the best thing out there, and that's owning a car. That's what people are willing to pay by far most. If we want to really disrupt, it's not to preach to people, it's not to manage them, it's to try to bring something that is as good. And I think we can, but only by everything else in a really simple way. And if you think of the
whole ecosystem, yeah.
And if you think of the concept mobility as a service, focus on the last word.
Yeah.
That won't get you too far.
So, I mean, that's a good point that, people like to have cars, but if I understand correctly, also people who have cars, they don't use it that much. So it basically sits there as a asset that is degrading value all the time because it's not being used. So that's also one thing that you would like that people would use more of their assets that they have to generate value for themselves.
Well, the younger generation, they're smarter with their investments as people our age, where we thought that ownership is the only thing for something. They're used to using things and not having the hassle or the risk of ownership all the time. And it's kind of given. That it was obvious for me when I started thinking about the whole mobility as a service. I looked at the one thing that they use in telecom, because I drew the analogy, is this ARPU, average revenue per user. So how much do people have for this need monthly in their pockets? It actually, that number didn't exist in mobility.
Yeah.
So I had to try it out, find it. Now you can find it pretty easily from consumption. Whereas in European or Western world in euros, people spend about 30 euros for their mobility needs, mobile needs.
Yeah.
To mobility, they use 10 times that much. So we're talking about 10 times as big as the whole telecom disruption was. Yeah. It's the second largest expenditure. 76% of that value of the market lies on that asset, that car, that is used about 4% of the time.
That's
so
very little.
Someone will crack that formula. Come on, it's given. Give me a better place for productivity, leap, potential.
Yeah,
than
even from 4% to 50%, that's a huge leap.
Yeah, and if we take Tokyo, in Tokyo, to be able to purchase a car, you have to have a dedicated parking space, and they're not.
That's going to cost several tens of thousands of dollars.
You have that, and then you have the car.
Yeah.
And do you know how much the cars are used? Over 50% of those cars in Tokyo are used less than once a week.
Oh, that's a low.
Yeah. We might laugh and we might be that, but that's not smart. And how come we can preach to them, but it doesn't change the fact. No, I think it's a good market opportunity.
Yeah.
You look at that and you see, hey, what do I have to do that those people would give me the same money and feel the same comfort? And it boils down to this one thing. If you want to think what MaaS is, it's anywhere, anytime, on a whim. That's what the car brings. That's why the service is called whim. is because we ask people, so what's the essence of this freedom that people deserve?
Whim of mind. And,
They always say, I could do commuting, I could do all of this, but come on. Over the weekend, I'd like to be able to go golfing. I'd like to take my wife to the beach to have an ice cream on a whim. I don't want to schedule. I want to be able to go. And this is a thing that they want in Tokyo. And this is where we can say, hey, if we can do that, for the Finns, we all know what it is in Helsinki. Everybody says, I could live without the car, but I need that huge SUV because we have this summer house. Finns go there 5 times a year, approximately, and that's why you need the big SUV there. But I understand. Now the thing is, how do we serve them so that they can feel that they can anytime go to the summer house? We'll give them a car. And there's one interesting question, because I tend to ask, I've given over 2,000 speeches about this. Yeah. And I tend to ask people, so how many in the audience have a car? And almost every hand up, especially the public transport seminars. Then the second question is, well, how many of you have your dream car? Yeah. And outside of Abu Dhabi, there are not many hands up. In Abu Dhabi, all the hands up.
Because everyone has a dream car.
Not just one. Because I asked how many have 2, 3, 4. By 5, they started counting and still had their hands up. But okay, so not many have their dream cars. So if we are a bit mathematicians here again, or engineers, the car that you have will not be the cheapest. It will not be the cheapest model. It'll be something nice. Yeah. But not really the one that you always dreamed of.
Premium one,
Yeah, not the Ferrari always. But then again, you're using it only 4% of the time. So it should be mathematically possible that, when you drive, for those Tokyo people who only take the car out for once a month, you should be able to drive a better one, shouldn't
Try
you?
the Bentley or whatever.
Yeah, and not just that one. Yeah. So that's why we give people in the whim, instead of a car, why don't have a garage? Yeah. Full of hundreds of cars. Pick up a nice one. Today you may feel like don't be committed to just one.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Me I'm not living in capital region, but I live in Espoo, which is 14 kilometers from here, and I do have a car, but I always use public transportation to get to work because I don't want to drive in center. And actually, last year I drove maybe 9,000 kilometers my brand new car, so it's a huge asset on my parking lot that is actually wasted. Yeah.
So it's more about, but you have it, because this is what dragged me in this is because, okay, if money is in a car, then I thought myself, why on earth do I have that? And then until somebody promises something, makes a service promise that I can get around these. It's about those 5% of those trips. Yeah. Until somebody makes that promise, I'm still going to have that.
Yeah, of course.
And out of the value, I remember I was in Dublin and there was this transport engineer, a really, let's say, a skeptical one. And he said that, I've got mobility as a service. I have an annual ticket that gets me into Dublin and within Dublin. And I have that, and it only costs me 700 euros a year. And I said, that can be, of course it can be your MaaS. You just raised your hand when I asked who has a car. Yeah. So I said, okay, you're a professional, so can you roughly tell me what's the percentage of your trips that you do with your car? Is it like 40%? What is it? And then he calculated for a while and said, between 5 and 10%. Probably closer to 5% of the trips that I make with the car. Fine. You're also professional, so you know the actual cost of your car. So can you roughly tell me what the cost of that car is? Yeah. And it was somewhere between 10,000 and 12,000 a year. And I said, you realize that the 95% of your trips will cost you 700 euros a year, and the remaining 5 will cost you 10 to 12,000 euros a year. Do you see where the business case is?
That was sort of like the light bulb came on to his head after that.
I don't know, but he was silent after that.
He was like, okay, well, that's good if you can silence an engineer or a mathematician that way. That means that they're actually thinking. Regarding people in general, you said that there's. Do you have any statistic? Does it matter where you put this mobility as a service concept? People adapt it the same, be it US, Europe, Asia. It's everyone has pretty much the same mentality on that.
I'd say yes and no. Everybody in transport, they want to emphasize the local conditions, how they're different and so on. But the car is a car everywhere. Yeah. If we want to be comparable with that, we have to be just as scalable as the car. freedom, the idea of freedom of movement, freedom of mobility is same everywhere. We want to feel and be ensured that we can go places. And that's one of the most profound feelings that people can have. And please, let's not forget that.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful thought. I think it's one of the characteristic of, let's say, Western free societies.
Yeah.
Is that you can go places. Car has been a symbol and actually the only means that provides you with that. So we have to make sure that that's not jeopardized. Otherwise, you can talk all you want and do that. And that's the same everywhere. Now, because we have to make this service out of different components, well, the proportion of those components will be different. In many of the European cities, public transport is much more bigger split than it is in some of the US cities, for example, where it can be much more about car share and ride hail. But still the backbone is public transport. Maybe there's not so much walking potentials or cycling potential in some. But it's like with cars, the thing that sells in northern Sweden will be the big SUV Volvos, and it's not the same as in Jakarta, but it's a car still.
Yeah, it's a car. Yeah.
Made of a bit different components.
4 wheels, engine, and motor.
Yeah, but the general idea is the same.
Yeah.
And I'd say it's quite similar here.
Yeah. The freedom part is very good. I remember it was this former bodybuilder Dorian Yates who said it in some video that the absolute freedom in life is not giving a fuck, and I think that's a very good concept. That as you have this freedom of mobility and freedom to choose where you go whenever you go, that is
actually we've said that our purpose here in MaaS Global with WIM Service is that we enable you to live the life you want and deserve.
Yeah.
Without all that shit.
Yeah, that's a good motto, and it works. How do you see then when it comes to this transportation in the future? Do you see that, or do you want to have that transportation is not privilege? It's available for all. Let's say you're not that well off as a person, and you can still travel as far as you can manage.
Well, I think actually there's a nice way of looking at this. I even believe that it was that was Henry Ford's idea, to give that freedom to as big crowd as possible. And he succeeded quite well. Car is quite a democratized freedom in that sense. But it's still not for everyone. And I think for the whole of society, this freedom to be mobile, to be able to go places, to move, is quite a profound thing that should be given to everyone.
Yeah.
Now, how that is done is a different thing.
Yeah.
I'm not a big believer that somehow society should carry and be the service provider for all, but it should make sure that the markets are providing for all the ones. It should make sure that the infrastructure also caters to this, that we have the capabilities. Of course, there will be differences. There will be those that go for the luxurious, like in cars.
Yeah, and also wherever you live, for instance, different inflation, different,
exactly,
purchasing power, stuff like that. Yeah.
But it's kind of two-way street. I think that people deserve and they should have all this freedom of movement. They should be able to go anywhere, but also they should be able to have a say in what they choose. Is that, let's say that the lowest income, for example, that they would be fully provided by this one operator only, that's provided by the society, is not really freedom.
Yeah.
So I think that the more we can have freedom of choice also for who you get that freedom from is equitable.
Yeah, and it's in my mind it also helps you to actually evolve, because you need to have this competition and you need to have someone driving forward. But if you have this centralized system that only one provider can.
But this is not an easy task, because the mobility is not like Facebook or Google, which are pretty small and can be controlled and by even one player. Mobility is physical structures. It's urban planning. It's all of this. It will not be controlled by one. There will not be one winner in this. No chance.
Yeah, same as in smart city as a concept. No one owns city infrastructure.
Yeah, come on. There will not be a X company city. We all would even despise that as an idea. So it will be multiple vendors, multiple players, And I remember it was American VC who said it nicely some while ago, when talking about this concept, said that the issues in society that you can solve through technology, that one company can solve, they're done. There's nothing more left. We've done them already. Now it's down to these big questions. If we look at the industries that are not being really disrupted by structures, and we look at the more expenditure, well, the biggest expenditure for people is housing, living. Second is transport, then food, healthcare, energy.
Yeah.
Wow, these 5 dinosaurs that have not been disrupted. When it comes to disrupting them, it doesn't happen exactly the same way. There are analogies like with telecom and so, but it's time for political leadership. Because if not one company or a group of companies can solve it, we need a bit of political leadership.
Yeah, of course.
It's not me who should be setting how the markets look in Helsinki or New York. It should be the city itself.
Yeah, definitely.
But this is a tough one.
It's a very tough one. And if you
we know, we have a lot of political leadership out there.
And if you look, for instance, just for your power grid, there are a few operators in here. It's very hard market to penetrate as itself. Yeah. So it's very interesting to see what happens in that domain. And
it is, and it's not really an easy task. How do you create, first of all, as a city or government and jointly, how do you create markets that are free and open markets? They thrive, and there's a lot of innovation popping in. It works in the benefit of the end user. It works in the benefit of the system, meaning the city, that it's not jammed or anything. And it works in the interest of the environment. And of course, the businesses need to thrive as well. So, and to make those game rules, I'm not saying it's an easy task, but it's a worthwhile thing, because transport will be disrupted. Now we make those decisions how it will be disrupted.
Yeah, the future is not set, but it can be, it can be set in the right direction in that sense. Yeah. You touched about the environmental impact, and that's also very, what I see as a fascinating sort of like a side product with this mobility as a service. You can have this environmental impact also on your actions, that you can choose what kind of transportation services you have and you own, or what you want to use. So has that always been sort of like one of your angles that you want to promote also, that it actually, of course, it needs to create money in order for you guys to live and pay salaries, but it's a side product that it can actually create this environmental impact in the world?
Of course, for me, the biggest driver for doing this is that I've got 4 kids, and I'd like to be able to show them that, look, that's why Daddy was so much away back then, is that look at the cities, this is where they were, and this is what they could have ended up with, and this is what I've been doing, and being part of this movement to make it such that it really works, that you have the freedom, but without the downsides of ruining the environment and the city. With the transport. So it's always been the backbone of the whole concept and idea why I do this and why we do it over here. We haven't emphasized that too much, the environmental impact. And the reason is quite clear, because if we're up against the car, first you have to make something that is so convenient that people desire it. And it's hard to sell something that wouldn't be as convenient and easy and just environmentally friendly. So if you need to take a first angle, we aim to take the convenience, and that comes as sort of, we guarantee that in the background. That's our job, to make sure that you're not a polluter. Yeah. And we can do that. Now this is it, but it's, let's say, scenarios are a bit different in this, because of course the ultimate enabler for MaaS, and when the ownership will die, is when the AVs hit the road. That's when you're not going to own an automated vehicle, that's for sure. Yeah. Or maybe as an investment, but not really. Why would you let it lie over there? Because you can make it, put it into use, and the fleets needed are about 5% of the cars that we now have on the roads. Now, there's an interesting OECD simulation on that if and this feels convenient to you, a robot taxi will pick you up anytime from here and take you all the way to your destination. Sounds perfect, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like in the Minority Report movie. That you have these automated cars.
And it is actually quite technically doable at the moment. Yeah. Now, the bit of a problem with this is that it would cause, without any growth in the cities or anything, it would mean over 100% more traffic. And we can all think how that would look. I would not like to be in that city. It would be perfect for the first 2%.
Yeah.
That would get an excellent service, good price, and extremely good. But then the end effects will be horrible.
Yeah.
Now, this cannot be solved by stopping or banning those cars. That's not going to work, because politicians will say what we want, and we as people would want good services, and we would just say, okay, build more roads, please. Now, there's another one. If those AVs will be such that they will be more shared, they will pick you up, take you to a station where you have more mass transit and work in a more productive way, then out of that plus 100% becomes more than minus 30. And the difference between those scenarios is huge. Now, how would we get to that where there's minus 30? Is like someone said, this MaaS needs to happen and become big before the AVs hit the road.
Yeah.
So the people are used to these interconnections. Now, how will a city cater and enable this kind of future where they will just pick you up and then take you to something that's more productive?
Yeah.
And that they're combined? Well, the only way is that you start planning the city not corridor-based as they are now, but more hub-based.
You have these inflection points within the city.
And you make sure that those points are so pluggable. Of course, digitally, but now we're talking physically as well. It's like a USB port. Whatever innovation you come up with plugs into that really productive system. And secondly, you make sure that those stations are such that we consider, because we call it in transport as friction. You don't like these interchanges. But as a city, I would make sure that those environments are such that we love that interchange.
Yeah.
I know it sounds ridiculous now if you look at London and look at the tube stations. Would you love that interchange in the tube? No. But you can. And you should thrive for that. So that people would feel that, okay, this is the best part of my day is when I'm changing from that AV in the station, because there's so much cool stuff around.
Yeah. And I think then from this MaaS concept point of view, data comes also into play, that you need to have a real-time data in order to solve out these bottlenecks that people would then create. Yeah. So that's going to be a very interesting challenge, at least, to solve it up.
And I suppose this open ecosystem, which sounds like a do-gooder thing, but it's the only way you can solve this.
Yeah.
Is how I tend to say it. If you think of how this business will run, ask 3 questions. As a consumer, would you like to get everything from one-stop shop? Yes, you probably would. Would you like to choose who you get that access from? So if you hate this whim CEO, you can go to someone else. Yes, people kind of like freedom of choice. That's why cars are so good, because you get to choose your car.
You can choose whatever.
Yeah, they tried that in our eastern neighbor in Soviet Union with just having one car brand. Didn't really bring the dreams.
Yeah, you need to have that candy store.
Yeah, so we need choice of, first of all, access from any operator to everything. Yeah. And then you need to be able to choose that operator. So that means end-to-end relationship between transportation providers and MaaS operators. Yeah. And then thirdly, would you like to have, instead of a subscription that only works in your home city, or would you like to have a roaming subscription?
Yeah, globally.
Yeah. And actually in the 90s, I think that there were teleoperators who said, no, it's going to be enough to have a citywide mobile operator. Yeah. Would you take that now? Even though most of your calls are within that city, but come on.
But just in case, and because the price point is not that much higher.
We all laugh at that just as an idea. It's not going to be. And if that is the case, then you realize how the production of these will be. Yeah. It means that you just have to have an open ecosystem. There's just no other way. It's a bit of a shame that in this market, too many think of the industry's benefit or my core business benefit. Look at the end user. Just focus on what they should be getting, and you can't get it too much wrong there. If you try to first have focus on your industry's benefit or your company's benefit, you'll end up getting lost.
Yeah, right. Usually it's quite simple what end users want. They want to have more money or value and save time. Those are usually the 2 driving principles.
And they really want convenience.
Yeah.
They want to be serviced.
They want to service.
We've checked out in all of those markets where we are, convenience comes first.
Yeah.
You know that there's a burden that people spend about 90 minutes in their transport, but they want to feel kings. For those 90 minutes, they want to be served.
You talked about these automatic vehicles. How do you see then MaaS playing in that? You said you were in a race against those in one sense. If you have this Uber, for instance, coming into play and they own all of their car fleet, would Is that sort of like a competitor to this MaaS concept? That was sort of like your doomsday scenario, that you had this one big monolithic service provider handling all.
You could think of it that way. I kind of see that the more supply there is, the better, provided that we get access to it.
Yeah.
So the more Ubers and Lyfts and Grabs and Didis and Vias and Movers around is great, because to really give people the certainty of anywhere, anytime on a whim, you need to convince them that I have enough fallbacks, enough supply to say that, okay, what if Uber isn't here? Well, I have this and I have this and I have this. Now, for the end user's benefit, I hope that we get a lot of really versatile offerings and supply over there. Now, of course, and Uber said it out loud that they want to become a MaaS operator as well. Now, what I do think is it will go, like I said, that people want the whole access from one-stop shop. That's kind of obvious. But I understand the trials of could I as a company control the whole environment, have all the means under my domain, and just focus on and really control the whole environment. Because of course it sounds easier to handle, better to give promises, because there's no third party. You own everything. You own your fleet, you own your bikes, you own your buses, you own everything.
You can have a vendor lock.
Yeah, and that sounds like much more doable, and even in early days it might actually be quite a tempting way and even work. Now the problem is that they're kind of used to, in US for example, that it will be Uber and Lyft that will be the only global dominators of MaaS space, and they will control all their modes. Well, they can't really be on top of metros, even if they'd like to. I don't think so.
It's quite hard.
Now, the problem of this has to do with the cities. Now, mobility is so big that not two players will control this. Others will get enough investment money to do the same thing. So we will have at least 5 different vendors. Let's take New York now, and we'll have 5 different ride hails over there that are now already causing a mess. But it's only a beginning, so it will be much more. We have 5 different bike providers, because of course it's a free world, so you can't control. You have to give the others a shot as well. So 5 different on top of each other, 5 different bike providers. We have 5 different car share operators that are really successful, all of them, and they have scooters and everything, all of them. Do you think that the infrastructure can cater to this? No. It's extremely unproductive, and the one that has to actually cater to that is the city with its infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I think we're heading to that now. It's great that Paris has become more liberal in allowing. It was Autoliv, then they stopped and they said, okay, companies please come in. But now there's about 10 bike shares, 10 car shares, all of them coming in, which is great. But then for the people to have all of them in different silos, it just becomes a mess.
20 different applications on your phone, for instance, to get
and if you just have silos, like, okay, there's one MaaS operator that controls these parts of the infrastructure, and then there's a competitive one, and they all have simultaneously all the physical infrastructure on their own, it's just going to be a mess.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge mess, and not very good for the end user once again.
No. But I understand these. It's kind of. It seems that in transport, because everyone's big, we have this tendency of trying to split the cake before we even have the eggs.
Yeah, that's the normal way of thinking, I guess. Regarding the future of cars, you touched about AVs, automated vehicles, and robot vehicles. And you said that no single person would like to own AV. I mean, that's interesting, because I was thinking that would I like to own a robot car? Yes, that would be nice. But is the trend so that then it would be sort of like this one hub provider of AVs that would be under one big corporation and not individuals owning these?
No, I think there will be several fleets providing those AVs. Yeah. Now we're a bit stuck with the current mode of cars. Let's think about us as humans. We spend about 90 minutes in transport. What if I gave you 90 minutes back to your day?
Yeah.
What would you do with it? That's the most relevant question. So I think that there will be, AVs that are restaurants. There will be AVs that are gyms. There will be AVs that are living rooms, offices, all kinds of things for purposes. So you're bound to order more something where you spend time is the most valuable asset. And since you're not stuck with two hands on a wheel, you'll probably end up wanting to do something. And that kind of brings, because even if your own robot car would be quite convertible, but it can't convert into some things like that.
Yeah.
And then there's the productivity. If that robot car is only for your purpose, it just becomes so unproductive that the ones that actually offer you that as a fleet. So you have, on the other hand, your leasing payment that is going to be like €1,000, and then you get a subscription where you can order a restaurant or a gym or anything, and it's going to be 200. So
yeah, there's a gap in there.
The money will talk.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. I think it was Warren Buffett who said that he has like $70 billion in his bank account. Time is the only thing he cannot actually buy. So that's a very good.
And I think that's the biggest disruption in this is, of course, it's huge how the cities will change and how transportation, how the market, which is a huge market, how that will change. But profoundly, the biggest change is that since Roman days, I think it's been a constant that we spent that roughly about 90 minutes in transport, and we accept kind of that waste. Nobody is there just for the fun of it. You're there because of the destination. Now, if I can really give you 90 minutes back to your day for the society, that's a huge thing, isn't it?
It makes more productive as a society, so that's definitely a good thing. But yeah, you're in a rush to get to the next meeting, but I think we can wrap this thing up. But where people can hear more about you or learn more about the concept?
Well, go to the MaaS Global website. We try to get all the understanding we have over there because, like I said, we can't do this alone, so we try to be and give out as much information as what we've learned. That's one of those places. Check me out in Sampo Hietanen in Twitter, LinkedIn. I try to also put information over there. And of course, I still keep on being in all kinds of, I give a lot of speeches still. So if you still feel that you want to listen to the same old preaching, then please come in. I'll try to throw in some new data every now and then.
Yeah, that's excellent. And even though they are not in part of this podcast, I've seen your slides, and there's good amount of information in there, and that's a good stuff. So yeah, we'll be sure to put this information out on our site also. But thanks, Sampo.
Thank you.
You have just listened Future Builders podcast with Sampo Hietanen, talking about mobility as a service, the future of transportation. Join the discussion and follow us on social media. You can find us by using keyword Futurebuilders and visit our website wearefuturebuilders.com. If you have any questions, recommendations, or you want to be our guest, please drop us an email, team@wearefuturebuilders.com.